My name is Jake, and welcome to the second episode of Good Timin. As always on this podcast, we're going to be talking about one of our all-time favorite bands, the Beach Boys, and I think these next couple of episodes are going to be a lot of fun because we're going to be sharing our own personal rankings of pretty much all of the Beach Boys studio albums. So with me today, I have Reilly, and both of us have each made our own list of the albums from our favorite to our least favorite, and we're going to go through that. So this is likely going to be a two-part show because of how many albums are in the Beach Boys discography. So today we're going to try to get through at least half of the band's albums, hopefully. We may go all the way up to number 11, number 10, somewhere around there. And then we will finish it off on the next part, and we may have someone else join us for that second part of this episode. So real quick, before we begin, there are a few albums that we decided to leave out for this. Those three albums are the Christmas album, which we left out because, there's some originals on there, but there's also the second half is pretty much all covers. I think only the first 5 songs are originals on there. Yeah. We are including Party, which I know that's all covers, but we did decide to include that. But we also left out Stars and Stripes Volume 1 for obvious reasons. And we also left out the Smile Sessions, but we are going to talk about those albums a bit at some point, probably once we're done doing this full ranking. So we will get into those eventually, but we're not going to include them in this ranking. So I think that's about it. So why don't you kick things off, Reilly, and share your least favorite Beach Boys album?
All right. So quickly, I want to mention we left out the Christmas album for obvious reasons. It's a good album. It's just it can't really compare it to the rest of the discography. Smile is very unique in that we have versions of it. Brian even finished a version, but we can't really, it's not finalized. It wasn't released in 1967 like it was planned to. And Stars and Stripes is not even really the Beach Boys. So, all right. I feel like, Jake, you and I will have the same bottom album. I have Summer in Paradise from 1992. And I want to preface this by saying that as much hate as this album gets, I think it's not as bad as everybody says it is. It's obviously not a Pet Sounds, but there are some good moments on it. Lahaina Aloha, like we mentioned in our last episode, I think is a really good track. I do want to give a shout out to Strange Things Happen and Island Fever. And I think those two songs are actually pretty good. The thing that kind of brings them down a little bit for me is just the production. I think if it was produced better, even more like Beach Boys 85, they would be really good tracks. But overall, this album, though, most of it's kind of hard to get through. It's kind of a slog. I listened to it today, and Summer of Love especially, oh my God, that's a terrible track. Although I will say, the chorus of that song, The Summer of Love, I think if that was applied to a completely different song, it would be listenable. But overall, just the production really carries us down. Although my biggest fault with it is not even Mike Love or the songwriting. It's the last track, which is a version of Forever done by John Stamos, which is really bad. And again, and you've said this before, Jake, and that's where I'm going to steal this from. It's basically Forever turned into a 90s glam pop song, which is horrendous. And I don't think it's John Stamos that's bringing it down. It's, again, the production. I think if John Stamos basically did what he did on the episode of Full House, where he just went to a piano, sat down and sang it, it would be a really good tribute to Dennis. But that's not what they did. And it's kind of epitomizes everything that's on that album. Terrible production and over-the-top songwriting.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said. And as you predicted, my last place album in my ranking is Summer in Paradise from 1992. I agree with you. I think it's the production that really brings this album down. Like you said, as harsh as people are on it, it's really not as bad as it's made out to be. There are some decent songs. Lahaina Aloha is definitely the highlight. You pointed that out, and I think the community also really likes that song. It's just a really catchy song, really nice chorus, great vocal. Still Surfing is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. I like the falsetto. I'm not sure who's doing it, but I like the falsetto during
probably Al.
Probably, yeah. Probably during the chorus, though, I like that. Under the Boardwalk has a nice vocal from Carl. Again, really cheesy production on the track, but I do like the vocal from Carl. Carl could pretty much make anything sound good, even the crappiest of crap. But
he cares.
Besides that, though, yeah, there's definitely some stinkers on here. The cover of Surfin' is pretty atrocious. I'm not a huge fan of the original myself, but the cover is just like the most obnoxious thing, and I don't like it at all. Summer of Love, like you said, it's one of those things where like it's the worst song ever, but it's also the greatest song ever. Like the fact that it exists, the fact that it's actually a thing, like Mike Love is doing this like pseudo rap song, like it almost seems like it's not even real, but it is. And yeah, it's one of those things where like I never like put it on like intentionally, but like I feel like you can ironically enjoy it, you know. And then of course, as you mentioned, you know, we cannot leave out the atrocious cover of Forever that closes out this album. Again, barely even really a Beach Boys song. It's mostly a cover done by John Stamos. But as I mentioned on the last episode, it's like they took a beautiful song by Dennis and turned it into this, you know, 80s or 90s glam metal ballad. And it's just, I hate it so much. It honestly offends me. It's maybe the most offensive thing to me that it was recorded under the Beach Boys name, just because I feel like it's it disrespects Dennis's legacy. Yeah, it's just, I can't stand that song. At least it's at the end of the album. So like if you own the album, you can stop it before it gets to that song. But yeah, I don't like it at all. And I guess to conclude, yeah, like you said, it's really the production on this album that brings it down. It's not good. It was one of the first albums to be done using was it Pro Tools?
It was Pro Tools, yeah, like an early version.
In a very early version, and it definitely shows just listening to it that you know, this is not a very well produced album. So that's our least favorite Beach Boys song. And honestly, to be honest with you, Reilly, if Forever wasn't on here, it might not have been last for me.
I full-heartedly agree.
It Forever brings this down for me.
Absolutely.
I think it into dead last.
Yeah, the thing is, I kind of almost appreciate what Mike Love was trying to do in concept. He wanted to make not necessarily a back to basics Beach Boys album, but like he wanted to do a summer album. And like for a 90s Beach Boys, just kind of who already had all their career pretty much done, it's like, yeah, I can appreciate this. And the production was brought down. Quick note though, before we get to our next pick, I do appreciate the sentiment of Summer in Paradise. I don't agree with a lot of Mike Love's politics, but I do appreciate that he cares about the environment. So I do want to point that out. And the song Summer in Paradise has a much better version done live.
I agree. I've heard it. It is better for sure. And I feel like you could say that for like any of the songs on this album, really. Like I've heard a live version of Under the Boardwalk. I think it's better as well. So
I got to give that a listen. I want to hear Lahaina Aloha live. I feel like that'd be awesome.
I don't know if they ever did it live, but if they did, I'd love it. It'd be great. Yeah.
I don't think they actually intended that one to be their best song on there. I think he intended Still Surfing to be the best one on there, but
yeah, there's that quote from Mike where he's like, "Oh, Still Surfing, what a song."
All right.
Yeah. All right. So, do you want to go first again, or should I?
Yeah, we could just keep that order going.
All
right. The next one for me, and this was actually a pretty tough call because the next two are kind of really close for me. I have Keeping the Summer Alive from 1980. And I know that's some people's guilty pleasure album, but I will say the quality jump here from Summer in Paradise to Keeping the Summer Alive, it's a huge jump. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the production on this album. I feel like the production's good. I just feel like the songs are kind of weak. I think Going On is a really good song, and I think the title track is also pretty catchy. But besides those, it's just a big list of 6 out of 10 songs for me. I just think it's just kind of a boring album. Nothing really excites me besides those 2 songs. I'm pretty sure Bruce Johnston stepped in as producer for this one, and I think he did a good job. The production's pretty good. And I don't think any of the songs are like outright terrible, like Summer in Paradise. They're just boring. Nothing really carries this album for me. Like I like Going On, and I sort of like the title track, but even Going On, I feel like it's just a regular 8 out of 10. Like I'll put it on. It's on my playlist for the Beach Boys, but I'm not going to search for that song and put it on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I feel. Just a boring album. I enjoy it in parts. I enjoy aspects of the songs, but overall it's boring.
Fair enough. For me, so my number 26, this might come as a shock to you, but I think I kind of hinted at it. I'm not a huge fan of the very first albums by the Beach Boys, the very early albums from like 62, 63, because I think there's a lot of filler on them. And for my number 26, my second least favorite Beach Boys song album, I chose Surfin' Safari. Obviously the title track is a classic. It's a great song. Definitely one of probably the first Beach Boys song that I really like that was released. As I'm not a huge fan of surfing, as I mentioned. But it's got a couple of tracks. I like Cuckoo Clock quite a bit. I think it's got a nice little melody. But besides that, there's just not much here that I come back to. I do not like 10 Little Indians at all. It's offensive today, obviously, and
it was offensive back then.
Right. And the fact that this was the second single from this album, I'm pretty sure it was definitely I believe it was the single that was released after Surfin' Safari. That's kind of baffling. Also, County Fair, it starts out promising, but once the carnival barker comes in, I start to get very aggravated.
Agreed.
It gets very annoying very quickly. And also, I know 409 is a song that has a lot of people seem to like. I'm not that crazy about it. I think it's maybe better live because I've heard Mike's version of the Beach Boys do it live, and it's fine, but it's definitely not a favorite of mine. So, it's like I think it's one of those albums where like you kind of have to look at it in the context of the time. Like obviously, like it sounds a bit rough, a bit primitive, but that's understandable. They were just starting out, they were young. But in terms of like my personal preference, which is how I tried to rank these albums, it's just not a favorite of mine. So it's number 26 on my list.
Yeah. I agree with you on a lot of those sentiments. I have it a bit higher. Cuckoo Clock, though, I think is actually the easiest standout. I love how Brian's falsetto is used to mimic a cuckoo clock, like a real one. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, but I'll get there when I get there. All right, 25. All right. I have 15 big ones from 76. And a lot of the same things that I have with Keeping the Summer Alive are on this. And I think the standouts on this are a bit higher than Keeping the Summer Alive, which is why I have it higher. But like I said before, these two are like neck and neck. I could have put either one below. But I do like some of the cheesy 70s production on this album. I think that actually makes me enjoy it more. I did listen to it today. Again, a lot of these bottom ones I did. Hadophonia is awesome. I just wish it wasn't as short as it was. That same song is pretty good. I don't know if that's a cover or not. Is it a cover?
No, it's an original. I will say, not to interrupt you, but I will say there's a version of that on, I believe it was a TV special they did. It was like called It's Okay, I think. It was like a TV special that came out in like 76 around the Brian's Back thing. And there's a video of them doing this song with like a church choir or like a gospel choir. And I think it's much better than the album version, but I do like the song.
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I think there's a couple more standouts on here. I think the standouts are a bit stronger. I really like It's Okay. I feel like most people do.
Yeah.
The cover of Rock and Roll Music, I don't really like it in the studio. When it's live, though, I really enjoy it.
I agree. I'm with you. Totally.
I never understood how that was like really popular at the time, but I guess it kind of goes to that endless summer kind of era that they were in, and like the 60s, 50s, kind of nostalgic period. I do like Dennis's version of In the Still of the Night.
I do too. It's great.
Yeah, I really like it because I feel like Dennis has the right voice to cover it. Like he has that passion in his voice that isn't really in other people's voices in the band. Not that others don't sing with passion, but like for Dennis, it's much more upfront. And kind of going back to Surfin' Safari, kind of backtracking a bit, I really like his version of Miss America on there. But again, I said we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, that's 15 big ones for me. I just think it's kind of boring. I do like the cheesy production though, and a couple more standouts.
Mm-hmm. All right. At number 25 for me, we got another early album, and this is the one that probably might be a little controversial, especially if you do like the early stuff from the Beach Boys, because this is kind of considered one of their, I guess, classic early albums. But Surfin' USA. My issue with this album, it's got obviously the title track is a classic, good song. The Lonely Sea is fantastic. Amazing ballad from Brian, one of his best early ballads. Of his early stuff. That's definitely up there. But my problem is there's too many instrumentals on this album, and they don't do anything for me. I'm not a big fan of the instrumentals. I like plenty of Beach Boys instrumentals from later on, like The Nearest Faraway Place, and obviously like Let's Go Away for a While and stuff like that. But these like surf rock instrumentals that they did, they don't really do much for me. I rarely listen to them, if ever. And also, I know the song Shutdown was one of their popular early hits. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's just, I don't know. It's never done anything for me. I don't hate it, but like I never really choose to put it on. So, like I kind of like Surfing Safari. I just feel like there's a lot of filler on this, and it's definitely better produced for sure, but just not a favorite of mine. So that's number 25 on my ranking.
Yeah, I feel like those two albums kind of, in terms of quality, but in style, just kind of go together really well. So yeah. I don't blame you too much, but I kind of disagree on the instrumentals, but we'll get there.
Fair enough.
The next one I have is Beach Boys Party, and I actually really enjoy this album. I just can't rank it higher because it's all covers.
Yep.
I'm a huge Beatles fan, so I love hearing Tell Me Why, which is one of my favorites off the Hard Day's Night album. I really like that You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. I think Dennis sang that one too. So another perfect Dennis pairing with vocals. And I was kind of shocked to learn that this version of Barbara Ann came from Party, especially when I was first getting into the band. I'm like, oh, they did Barbara Ann, right? And then I see that it's this, and I just hear a bunch of laughter in the studio. I'm like, what the hell? But I still enjoyed their version of Barbara Ann. I just wish they kind of had a much more clean studio version of it, but that's fine. Again, really enjoyable. It's just all covers. I do like all the covers. I actually think the weakest track on here is their medley of their own songs.
Yep.
One song I really wish they did with the covers, and I'm really surprised that they didn't do it, was Be My Baby. I really, really would have liked to hear. I've heard an acoustic version of that with Brian singing, but didn't happen. Although if you've ever looked at like the huge box set or digital box set of Party, they have so many more cover songs that you didn't hear. They did a version of Satisfaction, and I was like, oh my God, this is cool.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, oh, that's cool. They did a Stones cover. Yeah.
So like I really like this. It's just it's all covers, and I can't put it against any of the higher albums for me. So best Party.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about it. It's not up, it's a little higher for me, but the reason it's pretty low for me as well is for this pretty much what you said. I just feel like I can't rank it any higher than it is. For considering that it's all covers, and it's not all great either, but it's a fun little listen, Yep. Okay, so at number 24, surprise, surprise, it's another early album, and it's Little Deuce Coupe. This one, again, couple tracks I like the title track, but again, it's also a kind of, they repackaged it because it was originally on Surfer Girl, so it's kind of cheating in a way. Ballad of Old Betsy is my favorite new song on the album. I think it's a nice song. I wouldn't put it like as like a top-notch Brian Wilson ballad or anything, but it's a good song. But yeah, kind of similar to what I've said for the other albums. Like a lot of the tracks on here don't do anything for me. They feel like filler. I do like that, like there's like that car theme throughout it. I think that's cool. Like, in a way, it's kind of like an early concept album, which is kind of cool. But like 409's on here, which I said I don't really care for that much. Shutdown's on here, same thing there. Be True to Your School has never been a favorite of mine. I know that it's a song that the Beach Boys still do to this day, and they've been doing it for many years. Obviously, Mike with his win. But yeah, I've never really cared for this song, although I will say that I do prefer the album version on Little Deuce Coupe over the single, where they added in the cheerleaders, which I think it's the Honeys, so like Brian's wife Marilyn. I can't stand that version, so I definitely prefer the version on Little Deuce Coupe. But yeah, just never been a favorite album of mine. I like a couple tracks, but that's about it. So
a couple of months ago I would have agreed with you, but we'll get to Little Deuce Coupe when we get to it. I do love Be True to Your School though.
Not bad.
No, I love it, but I'll get to it when I get to it. All right. I know this next one you're going to be hurt by. I have MIU. But I will say we've kind of reached the point where, actually, even with my last album, all of these albums going forward, I enjoy. So there's nothing that bores me. I'm never like hating on these. I enjoy these albums. I will listen to them beginning to end. So I'll make that very clear. It's just, and I've told this to you before. It's for me. This is an album full of 7 out of 10 songs, and 7 out of 10 songs are really enjoyable songs. There's nothing too special on here except for My Diane. But after I learned what My Diane is about, I haven't really gone back to it. So I mean, like, I was like, this is a really good song, and then I'm like, oh, okay. But still, like, I don't know. There's just nothing too exciting for me on here. But then, like, and these are songs that I can just cherry pick, and I'm like, oh, I want to listen to this right now. Like Match Point of Our Love, I had that on earlier today when I was driving to get lunch. So these are good songs. It's just packaged as a whole. They're all like 7 out of 10 songs with nothing crazy exciting on here. I will say I really like their version of "Come Go With Me."
Yeah.
Awesome song.
It
And
is.
Al Jardine kills it on that one. So again, all good songs. Just nothing really stands out like every other album past this.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough criticism of MIU. I feel like a lot of people's biggest gripe with the album is that it's just not interesting. It is quite a bit higher for me. It's
Yeah.
an album that's really grown on me over time. I started out not liking it that much. But I will say, as you mentioned, "Come Go With Me," great cover, great vocal from Al.
Yeah.
People complain about the production on that album. I don't mind it. It's not the most exciting, obviously. It's kind of like that soft, not, I guess, kind of like yacht rockish, but I don't hate it. So yeah.
Yeah, I like the sounds. I love the sound of the album. I actually think it's really good production. I love yacht rock, so
Yeah, I
that'll
think
show up later.
Match Point especially sounds really good to me, but we'll get to it later because
I just wanted to shout out "Sweet Sunday Kind of Love." Awesome Carl vocal, and "She's Got Rhythm." Awesome song. So there are like some higher songs for me, but again, most of it's just
yeah.
Go.
All right, at number 23. So now we're jumping forward. We're jumping forward about 25 years or so to an album that has probably a pretty poor reputation among like a lot of Beach Boys fans, but it's really grown on me lately, and it's still cruising. So this is the Beach Boys at their cheesiest for sure. This album consists of a lot of songs that were featured in movies or on soundtracks, as well as a couple of like miscellaneous songs thrown in. This album has Kokomo, which I've said before, I have no problem with. I actually like it. It's a guilty pleasure for me. And anybody that does hate on it, I feel like you're just hating on fun. Like, it's a fun song. It's fun. It's catchy. It's got a good hook, good melody, and some great vocals from the guys. I love Carl's part on Kokomo. Also, this album has "Make It Big," which is a cheesy ass song, but I absolutely love it. I think Carl's vocals on it are like phenomenal. I love the chorus. "See your name spelled bright up on the bright light." So good. I also really like the title track's pretty good. Cheesy as hell, and some cheesy lyrics from Mike as well. But I do like it. I like the guitars in the second half of it as well. There's like, it goes into like this guitar solo part. I really like that a lot. One song that's grown on me lately in my car. I remember I used to not really care for this song at all. I thought Brian's vocal on it wasn't the best, and it probably isn't. But it's grown on me a lot. I think it's a fun song. It's catchy, and I've been listening to it quite a bit lately. I know the fan favorite on this album is "Somewhere Near Japan." I think it's all right. Like, I'm actually not nuts about it, but I don't hate it. Like, I get the appeal of it for sure. But I could see it growing on me more in the future. In terms of why this album is so low, though, there are some stinkers on here. I'm not a big fan of "Island Girl." Not Al. I think it's Al Jardine's song, not one of his better efforts. It sounds like it's knocking off that song by Blondie. I think "The Tide Is High." I think it's not. It kind of sounds like it's knocking off, but I'm not a huge fan of it. It's actually got a couple like memorable parts, but the song as a whole, I'm not a big fan of. And of course, there's the notoriously the Wipeout cover with the Fat Boys, which is just dreadful. I hate it. To me, I mean, you kind of have to view it like it's not even a Beach Boys song. It's mostly a Fat Boys song with Beach Boys contributing some backing vocals, but The fact that it's on a Beach Boys album and listed under the Beach Boys name, I do not like that at all. So, but yeah, still cruising. You know, it's a cheesy ass album. I get why it gets the hate that it does, but I like some cheesy songs from the Beach Boys from that period, and it's okay with me. So, yeah.
Full-heartedly agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. I might offend some people with this one. I have "That's Why God Made the Radio" this low.
Fair enough.
It kind of has what I call the David Bowie Black Star effect, where I'm kind of sad listening to it because knowing the history of the band and knowing that this is probably, and especially now, the last time the band's going to record together, it's just kind of sad. There are some good songs on it, of course, but like I do see a lot of it still as kind of just we're doing this to do it, not because we really want to make music. Still some good songs. The Private Life of Bill and Sue was pretty good. That's the title track's awesome. I like Shelter, so it's got good songs on there. I just don't revisit the songs that much. It's kind of a sad album, but it is a much better note to go out on than Summer in Paradise. Like I said, I'll listen to the album beginning to end. It's good, and it's actually really well produced. And I do like the Brian tracks. I'm just kind of sad listening to it.
Yeah. It's funny you say that about it being well produced, because that's one of the biggest gripes I think a lot of people have with it. They don't like the production. A lot of people do not like Joe Thomas, who did the production on that album, as well as a couple of Brian's solo albums, like Imagination, I think. So yeah, people actually don't seem to like the production, but I don't mind it, but I do get the issue with it though. It is very, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm not a huge fan of it either. But yeah, there's definitely some good songs on there though. Sure.
Yeah, it's a good album.
I do like Shelter, and I'll get into some of my favorites once I get to it on my ranking.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm at number 22 now on my ranking, and you're not gonna like how low this one is. This is the Beach Boys, self-titled, 1985. You know, it's got a few moments that I like. I really like "Get You Back." It's a great opener, great production. You hear Brian's falsetto on it, which is really cool to hear Brian again going up into that upper octave. I like "Crack at Your Love" a lot. Really nice, cool vocal from Al. Love the bridge section with Brian. This is one of the songs where I think the 80s production works really well. I think this song's, it almost seems like it was written for that kind of production, and I do enjoy it a lot. I Do Love You, which is a Stevie Wonder song that he wrote for the Boys. Really like that as well. Carl delivers a good vocal on it. And, you know, Carl has done a really good job, or did a really good job with like soulful songs, like on Wild Honey. You got like that R&B flavor on there, and this is another one of those songs. So really enjoy Carl's vocal on that one. The bonus track on the CD version of Beach Boys 85 is Male Ego. And I know you said you're not a huge fan of that one. I like it. The lyrics are, you know, cheesy as hell and kind of embarrassing, but I do like the song. I think it's catchy and memorable. But there's definitely some songs I don't care for on this album, which is why it's so low. California Calling is just no. It's not the worst thing, but like it's not great at all. I know a lot of people seem to like enjoy, I'm sure you do too, like a lot of Carl songs on here. They don't do too much for me personally. Like I know a lot of people really like It's Getting Late. Like to me, it's just fine, but like I would never choose to put it on. Where I Belong, it doesn't do much for me at all. There's a ballad by Bruce on here. I think it's She Believes in Love Again. I'm not a huge fan of it. I do like a lot of Bruce's sappy, like cheesier stuff, but like I'm not a huge fan of that one. So this album, like it's got a few moments that I like, and I can respect the 80s production on it. You know, I like that the Beach Boys were trying something new, working with Steve Levine from Culture Club, as you mentioned before. But yeah, it's not a favorite of mine. So yeah.
Yeah, all the criticism on that album, I totally get it. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll get there. We'll get there, and I'll get hated for it, but we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the 80s, I do have Still Cruising at number 21.
All right.
And I think the thing that brings us down is just the lack of material. I think there's only like 6 new songs on here.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, they closed it out with 3 oldies. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I do like this album a lot. I agree with everything you said. I think the only like of the new songs I don't like is Wipeout and Island Girl. Although Island Girl, I can go with it. I think something that's pretty good about the Beach Boys is like when they have really good songs, the surrounding filler, or at least for me, I actually start to enjoy a bit more. Um, and I'll get more to that statement later on when I get to my higher picks. But "Somewhere Near Japan" is a huge standout. I love this song, and the guitar work on this album is actually pretty damn good. Like you said, especially on the title track. The title track is kind of like a Kokomo ripoff, which you do see on a couple of tracks here, but I like Kokomo, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Um, Something about "Somewhere Near Japan" is each member, I think, besides Brian, has their own vocal moment to shine on that song, so I like that too. "In My Car" is a bop. Um, "Make It Big" is awesome.
Yes.
The new tracks are like ultimate 80s Beach Boys, and I love that. It's just everything else is Wipeout sucks.
It does. It
And
does.
there was also like, and I know what Mike Love was going for. They're going for all songs that were in movies. But if you just got rid of that premise and tacked on a couple more 80s tracks, gave Brian a bit more room to write, maybe leftovers. I don't know if he had any leftovers from his solo debut, but put those on there. It would have been a decent album that may have been higher on my list, but there's just a lack of material here. I do like the production though, even though some people hate it, but I like 80s music, especially new wave.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Yeah, it's definitely like you said, like there's definitely some good parts of the album. Like I like the guitar work, like you said, or like we both said, is great. And I think it's well produced for the most part. It's cheesy, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
not terrible by any means. So, all right. So number 21 for me, this is one you've already talked about, the Beach Boys Party. And pretty much, I'm going to echo what you said about it. I feel that there's some good covers on here. I like you. I'm a big Beatles fan, and I do enjoy the Beatles covers. I like their cover of "I Should Have Known Better." "Tell Me Why" is great. That's probably my favorite of the covers on here. And "You've Got to Hide Your Love Away" isn't bad either. I think that's Dennis on vocals on that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Also, my favorite cover on here is "Devoted to You." Really nice. I think it's a duet between, I think it's Brian and Mike. Really like that cover, as well as "There's No Other Like My Baby." It's pretty good as well. In terms of the songs I don't like, I have never been a fan of Barbara Ann. I think live, it's actually not bad. I think it's kind of fun live. I think it really rocks live. I think the live if you listen to like some of the like the Live at Nebworth album, Barbara Ann on there, it's like a freaking, like, it really rocks. But on this album, yeah, it gets on my nerves. I don't like all the laughter going on in the background, and yeah, I just don't like the production on it. It just sounds very, sloppy. And then also, speaking of sloppy, yeah, the version of "I Get Around" on here, it's not good. Like, I think it's supposed to come off as like, oh, they're goofing around and having fun. But I think it sounds awful. Like, I just think it's just very annoying. So, yeah, never, like, this album as a whole, not one I come back to too often, but there's like certain tracks that like I pick, you pick and choose from, that are good, especially "Devoted to You." I really like "Devoted to You." So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they got rid of like a lot of the laughter and they went for a straight acoustic album, it would have been a lot better. Especially like since it was like their Christmas release and they
Mhm.
needed to get an album out before the next album, which was Pet Sounds.
Right. Right. Yeah. Just
I,
to like, just
yeah,
to give Brian time. That's pretty much what the album was. It was a way to put product out, for Capitol, while Brian worked on the masterpiece that was Pet Sounds.
right.
Um, but no, it's funny you said that. So like, there is that unplugged, or that version that I think it was like the box set for Party, where like they do eliminate all the laughing and the talking in the background, so you just hear the tracks, which is kind of cool, and I think it sounds better that way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally agree. Like I said, a good album. There's some things I'd like to take away from it, especially that dreadful cover of "I Get Around" by the Beach Boys.
Right. It's like
That's
they're
my favorite song.
covering their own song, but they're butchering it. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
I like the medley idea, but for an acoustic album, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. So number 20, I have "Surf and Safari." It's very much a product of his time, and I enjoy it. I enjoy all of the album except for maybe a couple of songs. Like I said, I feel like the filler on here kind of gets brought up a little bit not because of the higher songs on here, but because of the time period it's from. I like that garage rock sound, but you also have to remember a lot of these albums, especially then, were full of novelty songs. Songs like "County Fair," um, "Heads I Win, Tails You Lose." Like those kind of songs were just normal. Um, but I still enjoy it. I don't really enjoy 10 Little Indians. I don't even really like the music to it either. So it's not even just the lyrics for me. It's just meh. But Surfing Safari is awesome. You can't deny it. Um, Cuckoo Clock is awesome. I love Brian's falsetto part on there. I talked about that. Dennis's version of Little Girl, You're My Miss America is it's kind of a beautiful song. I really like Dennis's voice for it. So this is a good album. It's just very of its time, and the Beach Boys had little to no control over it. Um, 409, I've never been a huge fan of, but like you said, live, it's awesome. See, that song and Shutdown are worked into as a melody or medley for the live shows, so I think that actually works great. Um, Surfing, I appreciate its historical purpose, but I'm not a huge fan of the song. Although I will say, I think I like it. It's actually been brought down by the 1992 version.
Yeah, yeah, you can't get that one out of your head.
Can't unhear it, right?
Yes.
But yeah, good album. It just I appreciate it as its historical significance rather than its musical significance.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Number 20 for me is an album that you've already talked about. It's one that I initially didn't like much at all, but it's starting to grow on me quite a bit. And now I do like quite a few of the tracks on it, although I also understand why people aren't necessarily a huge fan of this album. It's Keeping the Summer Alive from 1980. This one has Going On it, which is, I know you said, you're okay with it. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a highlight from the late 70s, early 80s period of the Beach Boys. I think it's just a standout song. Definitely the correct choice for the single from this album. And unfortunately, I don't think it did much, which is a shame because I think it's a great song. Oh, Darlin', I like. It's kind of a cheesy ballad, but nice little song. Nice bridge section with Mike on lead, and then Carl sings the verses. Real good song. Santa Ana Wins is a nice effort by Al. Unfortunately, I think the production brings this one down. I think the vocals are pretty grating on this one. And on this album as a whole, I don't think it's the most well-produced album. I know, Bruce and Carl were the two that I think that were mostly involved with the production on this album. And I'm just not a big fan of it. I think it sounds, if I had to describe it with a word, it sounds like plastic, like fake. I don't know. It just doesn't sound like real, Some of these songs I think would sound much better in like a live setting, and they definitely do because there's recordings of songs like the title track, Keeping the Summer Alive. That I think sounds better live. Lastly, so Endless Harmony, real cheesy closer from Bruce, but I actually like it quite a bit. I especially like that the last part where they hit that super high note. I think it's Bruce doing it. They go do 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 do. Really like that a lot. But there's definitely some crap on here as well. I don't like the School Day cover. I think it's like a Chuck Berry. I think Al does it. Nice vocal from Al, but I feel it's like just filler, which I think it is. And I don't like Sunshine very much at all. I think it's it's just the same thing over and over. I think it's just boring, and it feels like it was just put on to fill time. So yeah, I get the gripes people have with this album. Definitely not one of their strongest efforts by any means, but I think if you can get past the cheesy production, I think there's some fun little songs on here. So that's my number 20.
I agree. I never said like I hated it. It's kind of just boring for me. Although what's it called? When Girls Get Together, I think the instrumental version's awesome. I don't really like the vocals on it. I just meh.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. No, I forgot to mention that song. I totally agree. I think the instrumental sounds great. I think it's really cool production on it. I think it's originally from 1970, around the time of like Sunflower. I think it was like an outtake from those sessions. But yeah, I totally agree. I think the instrumental is great. I don't mind like the vocals, but I just think it goes on too long. It's just I feel like they could have cut this song in half and it would have been fine. But yeah, I totally hear you on that. Yeah.
It really misses that album really needs Dennis on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it needed. I think if you add in a Dennis, it would have been a much better album. I still enjoy it though. It's just I don't really go back to it too much. All right. So 20. I think we're at 20, right?
No, you're at 19, I think.
Oh, I'm at 19?
That was my yeah.
I have Surfing USA.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, these albums kind of go together, Surfing Safari and Surfing USA. And if you were to ask me about a couple of years ago, it would have been Surfing Safari ahead of it, but this past year I've been listening to Surfing USA, and I'm like, this stuff rocks. And I think part of the reason why I can appreciate it is it's a mostly garage rock album again. And the instrumentals, like you mentioned, don't do much for you. I love surf guitar instrumentals. Wipeout, Miserloo, awesome. Although I will say this version of Wipeout pales in comparison to the Dick Dale version. Like Carl's hitting the notes, he's just not hitting them with the same passion that Dick Dale did.
Right.
But I still appreciate the surf instrumentals. I love them. I think the Beach Boys do a good job with them. I think if you saw them do it live, it would have been much more cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do like the instrumentals. The originals on here are awesome. Farmer's Daughter is awesome. I love the bass line to it. And I actually love David Marks' rhythm guitar to that song too. The dun 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 dun. That's David Marks, which is pretty cool. And standouts, Surfing USA, even if it sounds like a Chuck Berry song, it's still a really good song.
Mm-hmm.
And Lonely Sea, awesome.
Yes.
Top song of the album. It's a good album. I just like, it's hard to compare like a pure surf album to what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the album a lot. So.
All right. So number 19 for me is That's Why God Made the Radio, an album that you already talked about. So the last Beach Boys album, likely the last Beach Boys album ever released. And, this is an album that there's some really great songs on here, in my opinion. From There to Back Again, I mentioned on the last episode, is one of my favorite Beach Boys songs from their later years. I think it's the last great Beach Boys song. But I also like Pacific Coast Highway, which I think follows it on the album, as well as Summer's Gone, which is like a really emotional and moving closer, as I said in the last episode, this album, That's Why God Made the Radio, it's very reflective. All of the members are kind of acknowledging in the lyrics that, they're growing older, and, I think that Summer's Gone's a really moving song. Nice vocal from Brian, and also Think About the Days is a strong opener as well. There are a couple of songs on this album I don't care for very much. You mentioned this one as one that you liked. I actually don't like. I'm not a big fan of The Private Life of Bill and Sue. It's never been a favorite of mine on here. Also, I don't like Beaches in Mind at all. That's easily my least favorite song on the album. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of it. I think Mike wrote it, which nothing against Mike, but I don't think this is a strong song. But this album, I know, as I mentioned earlier, it gets complaints from people because of the production, which I guess I understand. It's got like that very like smooth AOR like production, adult oriented. But it's fine. It's got some strong songs, and I think it's a solid way to go out for the band. Definitely a stronger way to conclude the band's recording career than Summer in Paradise for sure. So.
Yeah, I'm with you on some of that. I get it.
Yeah.
For me, it's just mostly like it's kind of hard to listen to, especially with like the older voices and
yeah.
Like
also, there's a lot of people that complain about like auto-tune on this album as well, and it's noticeable. Like I don't think it bothers me as much as it does some others, but like it's definitely noticeable for sure. So
yeah, it is. Can't lie about that.
Yeah.
Hurts to hear the Beach Boys using auto-tune, but they're not really using it to change the voice. They're doing it to fix the voice.
Right.
So, all right. Number 18. This is where we hit really good albums.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be very clear, so people don't get really pissed off.
All right.
I'm gonna hurt Justin on this one. I have 2020.
Justin's not gonna like that. That's pretty low.
Again, though, I have really good albums. I actually listened to this one today to like confirm its placement in the list.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this is kind of their white album for me, where there's a lot of songs I do enjoy, but the ones I don't aren't for me, so I don't really listen to them that much. Bruce's pieces on here I don't really like too much. But I do really like some of Dennis's tracks. Be With Me is pretty cool. And I know a lot of people hate this one. I really like Bluebirds Over the Mountain. Today I listened to it for the first time in maybe like a year. I'm like, this is pretty damn good. But I don't know. Do It Again is awesome though. I Can Hear Music is also awesome. Like those are the two easy standout tracks for me. And I was really shocked to hear that I Can Hear Music was actually a cover.
Yeah, it blows the original out of the water, in my opinion.
Oh, easily.
I think it's the Ronettes that did it. But yeah, the great production on that song, and great vocal from Carl. That's one of those songs I don't know how I forgot to mention it in like my honorable mentions on the last episode. But just a really well produced song. And I don't think Brian had too much to do with it either. I think it's mostly just a Beach Boys like Carl production. So it's a really strong song.
I really liked it. I also really liked the oh my God, I forgot it. Time to Get Alone. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
That's my standout. Like I mean, Do It Again and I Can Hear Music are easy standouts, but how I forgot it. I Can Hear Time to Get Alone is awesome.
Yes.
Although I like the Wild Honey Sessions version much better.
I still got to listen to that because
you got to listen to it.
You mentioned that, but I was very skeptical just because I love the 2020 version. So
it's very similar.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Just it sounds more like Wild Honey. Like I can't explain it.
All right.
Well, you'll like it though. If you like Wild Honey, you'll like that version of it. But that's all I have to say. It's like their White Album. Like the highs on here are high and the lows are real low. Like All I Want to Do.
Yeah.
Not a big. I love you, Dennis, but no. Never Learn Not to Love is a very. I like the song. I don't like the origins of it. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's to me. I'm not like. Yeah, the origins are, obviously not good considering, Manson's involved in it and everything. Honestly, I just don't think it's like it's an okay song, but like I don't think it's anything special. Like, right. Right. And for me personally, obviously I haven't got to 2020 yet on my ranking, but yeah, never cared for Bluebirds much. But I do like, and I actually do like Bruce's contribution, The Nearest Faraway Place, though. I think it's a very pretty instrumental. Hot take. I probably prefer that to, well, I don't know if I prefer it, but it's pretty much neck and neck with Let's Go Away for a While with me. So yeah.
It's a shocker.
I like it a lot. I think it's really pretty. So
Let's Go Away for a While is one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. Like it's in my top 20.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't mind it. It's just it doesn't do much for me. And I'm not the biggest Bruce fan, although I'll admit I do like his songs, but I don't know, maybe that's the reason. But I don't know, like I can cherry pick which songs I really like on here and the rest I don't really care for. So it literally it's unlike the previous ones where it's like all 7 out of 10s. Mm-hmm. This is like I'm dealing with like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 songs, and the rest are like 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. So it's like quite literally the most polarizing album for me.
Yeah. The version of Cotton Fields on here doesn't do much for me either. I know somebody mentioned it that they preferred that one. I think it was it Matt? No, it wasn't Matt. Somebody.
Lawrence, I think.
Lawrence.
No, it was Justin. Justin said.
Justin preferred the version of Cotton Fields on 2020 over the single release, which to me that was like the hottest take of.
Yeah, it's a huge.
Because I didn't even understand what he said at first, and then it hit me, and I was just like, wait, like really? Like I don't know.
That was my reaction too. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Cotton Fields is a great song. I love it.
Yeah, the single version just blows it out of the water, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I digress. I mean, a good album. It's completely polarizing for me. But then again, like I said, the good songs can bring the filler up for me. So if I'm listening to it as an album, I still appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
All right. So number 18 for me. This is another one you've talked about already. And this one's another one that has been a big grower on me for sure. I went from only liking a few songs on it, and now I like, I would say about half the album, maybe more. And it's 15 Big Ones. So obviously this album has a lot of history around it. This album was released in the midst of the Brian's Back movement, where there was that big campaign to get Brian back touring with the band, get him back in the spotlight, promote the Brian Wilson is a genius thing, and he was making a lot of TV appearances around that time as well. But this album, I get why people are critical of it. It's definitely not, I don't think it's one of the boys' finest efforts for sure. It was promoted as, oh, Brian's back in the studio, he's producing it. But the production on this album is definitely interesting. It's kind of a precursor to Love You in a way, with like the synths and stuff, which I kind of like personally because I'm a huge Love You fan. But in terms of the songs I like on this album, in terms of originals, really like It's Okay. I used to not care for it, but now I do like it a lot. I think it's really catchy, fun summer song. Had Diphonia, as you mentioned, great song. I believe originally an American Spring song that the boys redid, and it's really good. I do wish it was longer, like you said. And Brian doesn't sound particularly great on it, or for much of this album, honestly. But I actually don't mind Brian's raspiness on like "Love You" either. So not a big complaint for me. In terms, also Back Home, like Back Home a lot. They released a live version of it on Feel Flows, I think, and I like it a lot live as well. In terms of the covers, Palisades Park, excellent vocal from Carl. I've heard this cover. I know it's a bit of a slower tempo compared to the original version of this song, but I really like it. I actually like the tempo a lot, and I think Carl delivers a really strong vocal on it. Just Once in My Life, what a great cover. I actually prefer this cover to the original. I think it's really, I like the production on it a lot. Brian's vocal, this is an example where like Brian, like if you're judging it like from a vocal way, it's probably not the best vocal. It sounds very like shot and raspy, but I think that actually makes it more like emotional and moving. Brian's vocal on this song. Carl also great vocals on this song as well. In the Still of the Night, guilty pleasure for me as well. You like it, I like it. Really great vocal from Dennis. When Dennis's voice got raspier, I feel like he got more of like a soulful voice, and I think that kind of song, it really enhances it. I think Dennis was definitely the right choice to sing lead on that song. And then lastly, I forgot to mention two songs I forgot to mention. Chapel of Love, guilty pleasure cover. I know the vocal is rough, but I like it. I think it's like charming in a way. You can tell Brian was like giving his all on it. You can tell he really is passionate about that song, and it's a fun cover. Susie Cincinnati is a nice Al song as well. It used to not do much for me, but it's grown on me quite a bit. And I like the Feel Flows remastered version because this is another song that kind of sat around for a while. I believe it was actually released as a single a couple of times, like a B-side, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Yeah, but it's nothing like special, but like I enjoy it. I think it's a fun little style. So
I forgot to mention that Susie Cincinnati was the clear standout of 15 Big Ones for me. I'm
really
surprised I forgot it because like that's a guitar song I like to play.
No,
I just like the rest. I love playing it. It's a huge highlight for me. I kind of forgot about that. That is the reason why it's above Keeping the Summer Alive for me.
Oh, wow.
Susie Cincinnati, and It's Okay.
Yeah. Also, in terms of the reason why this album is still relatively low on my ranking, there's still quite a few songs in here that I don't really care for. I'm not a big fan of the Rock and Roll Music cover. The single version is definitely better. I think they sped it up a little bit on the single version. It definitely has some more energy to it, I think. But yeah, just never been a huge fan of it. Despite the fact that, it's kind of got like that synth heavy production, like, that Love You has too. But yeah, never been a big fan of it. It does rip live. I agree with you on that. Also, TM song, never done much for me. It's kind of just a goofy little thing. I don't really know why. I think it's kind of like a filler song to me. And a couple of the covers, a couple of the Mike covers, I'm not a huge fan of. Also, Everyone's in Love with You, not a favorite of mine either, but it's whatever. So that's it for me for 15 Big Ones.
I like Everyone's in Love with You. It's all right.
It's fine. Like, it's okay. Like
it's okay.
Yeah.
Fun is in, it's no sin. It's that time again. Oh, you're gonna hate me. You ready?
Oh God, I'm scared.
I gotta love you.
Oh, that's awful. Okay.
It's not for the reasons that everybody will probably think, and I've explained this to you the best I could.
Okay. Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
I like it. I like I said, all of these albums I like.
Mm-hmm.
I like Love You. In fact, I love You. It's just, it's too much of Brian at once for me. And it's not the kind of Brian I'm like really into. I love synth music, but some of it might just be like Brian's vocals in a lot of the lyrics for me. It's too much Brian. And I'm not saying too much Brian's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not a good thing for the Beach Boys, or at least it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no like bad song on here. I can't really think of one. I really can't. I love this. I love the whole album. It's just too much Brian for me. Uh, I do love the synth work though. I'm a big David Bowie fan, and I think I told you this. Excuse me. I've called this his version of Low. If you've ever listened to Bowie, Low is this big 70s synth album by David Bowie. And this is kind of like the Beach Boys version of it. And it's kind of funny because they came out in the same year. So two huge influential synth pop albums. But like I said, it's just too much Brian. The lyrics are a little too much for me at times. The Night Was So Young, though, awesome song. I'll Bet He's Nice is the huge standout for me. I love Mona. I love Airplane. I actually love Johnny Carson. I know a lot of people.
I do. No, I do too. I do too.
So, like I said, I love this album. It's just, is it really a Beach Boys album or is it a Brian album? And that was actually like a case back in the day. They were like, are we going to make this a Beach Boys album or are we going to make it a Brian album? So it seems much more of a Brian solo work for me. And it's too much of weird Brian. And sometimes it's just hard for me to handle. And honestly, if it really comes down to it, I think I like every album more than it. I don't hate this one more than any of the other ones. I just like the other ones a lot more.
Fair enough. That's fair.
Yeah, enough. I love the album. It's just I can't. I try to. I just can't.
Yeah, like my take on it, like I definitely get the perspective of like it's more a Brian album than a Beach Boys album. As you said, it was originally like Brian Loves You, you know? But like I don't like personally, I don't view it that much differently than like Pet Sounds, as like Pet Sounds is mostly a Brian Wilson thing. Like, yeah, there were some songs where like maybe like he intended parts for, you know, certain members to sing, you know, like Carl ended up, you know, doing God Only Knows. And just like on Love You Too, you know, you have the Beach Boys vocals prominent on a lot of songs. You have Carl on I'll Bet He's Nice and Dennis. You have Al on Honking Down the Highway. You got Mike singing Airplane and Roller Skating Child. So like, to me, the fact that the Beach Boys vocals, besides Brian, are also prominent on the album makes it a Beach Boys album to me. But that's just my take. I do understand that like it is a very Brian album, and I totally get like why some people aren't nuts about like this period of his music, because it's definitely different, a lot different from what he was doing in like, you know, the mid 60s, late 60s, or so.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say is like, I'm not disregarding it as so much a Beach Boys album, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a different side of Brian that wasn't in Pet Sounds, because Pet Sounds obviously is also a very Brian album.
Right.
But like, this is a different Brian. I feel like you can't compare the two, but I don't want to put it this low. I can't force myself to like it as much. I still love it though. Awesome album. I give it a full listen all the time. It's just,
yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it. I'm gonna get hate for it. People are gonna be like, kick this guy off the podcast. But
no, it's not. Honestly though, I get it, because like for me too, like this is one of many Beach Boys albums where like I started out only liking a few songs on it. You know, I liked The Night Was So Young. I liked I'll Bet He's Nice. But you know, it took a long time to really grow on me. I remember songs like Solar System and Johnny Carson. Those didn't click with me for a long, long time. Even like the opener, Let Us Go On This Way, which I know a lot of people like that song a lot, took a long time to grow on me. But now I pretty much like the full album. And I'll have a lot to say about it once I get to it on my ranking. It's a lot higher than where you put it, but
yeah, I love it, but I like the other ones more.
All right. Okay. Number 17 for me. This is an album this one was really hard for me to rank because it's got some incredible songs on it, some of the best songs the Beach Boys ever did, but it's also loaded with filler. And I feel like you can maybe guess what the album is. It's Shutdown Volume 2. This album has some absolute classics on it. It's got Don't Worry Baby, which is just, you know, one of Brian and the Beach Boys' best songs. The Warmth of the Sun, another hauntingly just beautiful ballad. I forgot to mention that last week is like an honorable mention. I really love The Warmth of the Sun a lot. Brian's vocals on it, just incredible. Keep an Eye on Summer. That's kind of like an album cut that I really like a lot. A nice ballad. And of course, Fun, 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 which is, you know, a staple in the Beach Boys set list. They've been doing it pretty much, you know, since the song came out. and it's a popular like concert closer as well. So, but as I mentioned, my issue with this album is just the amount of filler on here is just ridiculous. You got Pom Pom Playgirl, which I think is awful. I cannot stand it. I think it's annoying, and the very cringe-worthy at the end where they wave those pom poms all around. I think that's Carl doing that, but I don't like that at all. Louie Louie is just throwaway, nothing special. Denny's drums is literally the definition of filler. And I mean, it's not even like interesting drumming. That's my like that's beyond the fact that it's not a song. Like it's not even the most interesting drumming. So like it's not even that fun to listen to. And then obviously there's the spoken word thing, which like I know some people like that stuff, but like I just view it as filler, you know. So yeah, the main issue with this album is just the filler. That's pretty much it. I mean, if they had done a few more songs that were as top notch as, you know, Don't Worry Baby, The Warmth of the Sun, and put them on here, I think it would be a lot higher for me. But instead, we got crap like Pom Pom Playgirl taking up space on this album. And, you know, this is one of those albums where I think, if I remember right, Brian wasn't even that thrilled with it. Like, I think he even felt like it was rushed. You know, Capitol, part of the reason the Beach Boys ended up, you know, splitting with Capitol is because, you know, Capitol always expected product. They were like, okay, when's the next album? You know, and they're like, Brian's working on it. Well, no, we need another album. You know, we got to make money. So, yeah, it's not their finest album, but the reason it's not lower than it is because of the standout songs on it. So, yeah.
Don't know something?
Yeah, sure.
My next one was also Shut Down Volume 2.
All right. Well,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
The same as yours. I do want to shout out This Car of Mine. While it's not the most like complex song, I do like Dennis's vocal on it. I think it's one of those songs that Brian wrote that for Dennis. Mm-hmm. Shout out the cover though. That's one of the best covers for the band.
It is. Only the music was as good though.
Exactly. And Why Do Fools Fall in Love is a pretty cool cover. The cover that does suck though is Louie Louie, which I feel like the Beach Boys could have pulled it off, but they didn't. Like Louie Louie was a really rocking song. I like it's not the original version, but the version that came out by the Kingsmen, I think. Mm-hmm. Awesome version of that song. And there's other covers of Louie Louie around that time that were awesome. So I'm like, if any band could pull it off, it's the Beach Boys, and they don't. Because I mean, like with the surf guitar that they still had in their arsenal, I feel like they really could have pulled it off, especially Carl with like a lead, but they didn't. That's my spiel because I really like that song. Not the Beach Boys version though. Yeah. Fun is a shockingly complex song if you really look at it. I mean that's the guitar player in me. Not even counting the opening, which they did take that from Chuck Berry, but Chuck Berry also took it from Chuck Berry, so why you can't be mad at it.
Very true. Very true.
So awesome song. The chord progression is like shockingly complex if you really get into it. When they go fun, like in the chorus, is actually like insanely complex if you really look at it. But again, that's the musician in me. Don't Worry Baby. A lot of people I know, like there's a YouTuber named JT Curtis. I love the YouTuber, but he kind of rips on this song for sounding like Be My Baby, and I'm like, that's kind of the point.
Right. It's almost a tribute to it, right?
Well, Brian wrote that for the Ronettes. He wanted them to record it. And then Phil Spector said no way. So it's like, Brian's like, all right, screw you. I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah, and thank God they did, because it's phenomenal. I don't think the Ronettes couldn't have done it better. I don't think so.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of people like rip on it like Brian's stealing music. And I'm like, not really. Right. I love that song. It's one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. It didn't make my list. It almost did. The one that beat it was Please Let Me Wonder, and I feel like Please Let Me Wonder is like the upgrade to that song. But yeah, we'll get to Beach Boys today eventually. Yeah, it's a good album in terms of like the highlights, but everything else is too much filler. Oh my God.
Yeah. Shout out to In the Parking Lot. That's an okay song too.
Yeah,
I don't mind that one. That was one of the most recent songs that like really grew on me on this album. I was like, you know, this isn't that bad. Like, it's actually kind of a catchy little song, but like, yeah, most of the album tracks on this album don't do much for me. So.
I feel like if every other song was like quality wise of In the Parking Lot, I feel like it would have been much higher on my list.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Brian really put all his heart and soul into those 3-4 tracks, and the rest were just
Yeah, and like I said, I don't even blame like the Beach Boys because I think it's so on Capitol for expecting an album every like you look how many albums they were releasing those first few years. They're doing like 4 albums in 1 year. Like that's insane. 3 albums the next year. Like it's just crazy how much product they had to put out. And then once as the 60s progressed and they switched labels, obviously they were able to actually take their time making albums and put out very high quality material. So yeah. Uh, all right, so I think it's back to me, right? All right, so number 16 on my ranking, we're going back to the late 70s, and it's the LA Light album. This is an album that has grown on me quite a bit, and I know a lot of people, I think, in the Beach Boys community do appreciate this album. It's definitely got some great moments on it. Good Timin, name of this podcast, of course. Great opener. To me, that's the best song on the song on this album for sure. Lady Linda by Al. I know we kind of stole. It's part of like a Bach composition, but it's a really nice song. Guilty pleasure for me. Nice vocal from Al. Nice production on that song. Full Sail is a nice, not the most like interesting song, but like I really like it just because I think Carl's vocal on it is really pretty, and just a really smooth like yacht rock style song. And it's definitely a guilty pleasure for me. Love Surrounds Me and Baby Blue, 2 Dennis compositions that are very strong. Dennis, this is an album where, Dennis had some leftover tracks that were going to be on his follow-up to Pacific Ocean Blue, I believe. But the Beach Boys were kind of, lacking material. They needed some more songs to fill the album. And Dennis is, with the way Dennis was, that second album, he wasn't making much progress on it, I don't think. So they ended up putting those songs on this album, and they're very strong songs. Baby Blue especially. There are a few not so great songs on here. Most notably for me, Here Comes the Night. There's no reason this song needs to be 10 minutes. I don't know what they were thinking. Even like if it was shorter, like the single version that they put out, I still don't think it's that interesting. I like a lot of disco music, but this is not interesting disco in my opinion. And I think Bruce is mostly to blame for this. I think Bruce really wanted to, he was like, we're going to do a disco song. We're going with the times. That's what people want to hear. And then as soon as they performed it live, I'm pretty sure people were like booing them and stuff. So they quickly dropped it from their set list. And yeah, and the funny thing too, like the original song, Here Comes the Night, I really like it, from Wild Honey. It's actually like one of my favorite of like the album tracks on Wild Honey. But yeah, this disco version, just no, even Carl couldn't save it with his vocals. So Going South is really boring. One of those boring Beach Boy songs, in my opinion. It just does nothing for me. It just doesn't stick with me whatsoever. And I want to like it because, Carl has a nice vocal on it, but it's just boring. And Shortened and Bread is not the superior version, is the Adult Child version, which if we talk about Adult Child, we can get into that more, but not the best version of Shortened and Bread on this album. But yeah, this is an album that I think gets a little too much hate. I know like in the Beach Boys community, a lot of people do defend it, but generally like the general public, I think this is not that bad of an album. And there's some really strong highlights on here for sure. So that's my thoughts on LA.
The best version of Shortened and Bread is the 18-minute version that's on YouTube.
Oh God, I've heard that. Yeah.
That's the best version of Shortened and Bread, without question. Brian would agree with me on that. I have a lot to say about LA Light, and we'll get there when we get there, because I love that album.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 15. I got Smiley Smile.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of have, I don't want to say issues. I have the same remarks on this that I do with Love You, is that it's weird. But instead of being like purely like Brian Insanity weird, this is like the entire band being weird, and I love it. Like I said, I love the weirdness, especially with the Beach Boys. But this album is so like remarkably out there that for the longest time I hated it, and then I listened to Little Pad for the first time, and I'm like, I understand all of this.
Yeah.
Little Pad might be the most hauntingly beautiful song I've ever heard. Like, I feel like if I was on an LSD trip, I'd be losing my mind to it. But it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Hawaiian chords that they're using. I like the vocals on it. She's Going Bald is kind of like you said earlier, like it's bad, but because it's bad, you like it. Um, Heroes and Villains is one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. I don't like this version as much as the Smile version with the Our Prayer and G intro, but it's still an awesome song. Good Vibrations, I mean, come on, like that's an awesome song.
Yeah.
But of this album, those aren't the reasons I'm going to it. I'm going to this for Little Pad. I'm going to it for Wonderful, With Me Tonight. And I think it's wonderful. No, Wind Chimes is actually put in a different key on this album compared to the Smile version. I think it's in a minor key. I could be wrong, but
It probably is because it's really creepy on this album.
right.
A lot of the versions of the Smile songs on this album. So
Yeah. I could be wrong, and there's somebody listening might be able to correct me, but I think it's in a minor key compared to the major key version on a Smile. But again, like this album is so beautifully weird in a 1967 psychedelic way, and I love it.
yeah, I have to say, like on She's Going Bald, when it goes into like that sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na, like that is like the trippiest ass, like it almost it doesn't sound like it's from that time, you know. It sounds like influential in a way. Like
Yeah. Actually Little Pad has a bong riff in the beginning.
oh yeah?
You have to listen really close.
Huh.
But there's a bong riff. And shout out Paul McCartney for being the 6th or 7th Beach Boy on this album.
Vegetables.
Chomping on his vegetables.
Yeah.
I do not like this version of Vegetables, though. I like the Smile version a lot more. But it still works in the context of the album, but I'm not listening to this version on its own.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's gripe with Smiley Smile is just like it's a collection of like inferior versions of the Smile songs, you know. Like I'll be honest, I'm not as obsessed with Smile as a whole as like a lot of people are. I'm definitely like in terms of like Pet Sounds or Smile, I'm Pet Sounds all the way. But like I think this album definitely has like its merit. Like I do like the creepy version of Wind Chimes on Smiley Smile. She's Going Bald is weird, but like it's kind of fun. Like I kind of like it. Heroes and Villains, as you said, like it's not, to me it's the inferior version. I think the bridge in the Smile version definitely makes the song better. But there's definitely some, I mean, I'll get into Smiley Smile more when I talk about it, but like yeah, there's definitely some tracks on here that are a little too out there or that just don't do anything for me. So
yeah, I agree. Some of this I almost prefer to Smile in some way. I like how this is a conceptually psychedelic acid trip of an album compared to Smile's Americana Western album.
right.
But if it's Pet Sounds versus Smile, I'm going Pet Sounds all the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Also, I love how the guys just sound completely like stoned on Little at the beginning.
Yeah, that's when they do the bong riff. That's because they are stoned.
Right. Yeah, they're all like laughing and oh my gosh, it's so like funny hearing that. All right. Do we move on to my number 15, I believe? Yeah, number 15.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
All right, so we're in my top 15 now, and we're not jumping too far from LA. We're going the year prior, MIU. So MIU is an album that has also grown on me a lot. I understand the criticism of it. Like you said, it does kind of feel like an album full of like 6 to 7 out of 10 songs. But I think there's definitely some good stuff on here that I personally enjoy. As I mentioned, Come Go With Me is a solid cover with Al on lead. Sweet Sunday Kind of Love, great vocal from Carl. That definitely elevates this song to another level, Carl's vocal. I especially love the second half of this album. The sequence from you got Pitter Patter, which is a nice song by Mike and Al, I believe. Catchy little song, nothing like super special, but like it's fun. I definitely like put it on sometimes and enjoy it. My Diane is like a standout from this album. Really moving vocal from Dennis. I know Brian wrote this song, but Dennis delivers a really powerful vocal with like his raspier, more worn out voice. Match Point of Our Love. This is such a guilty pleasure for me. I love this song. I will defend it forever. It obviously the lyrics are cheesy. It's like this like tennis love breakup song thing, and it has like a disco beat to it almost. But I really like this song, and I love the outro. Where like Brian's like da 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 da, and then it goes into like there's like that beautiful like guitar line, I think it is, that like fades out as the song ends, and it's really like that a lot. And then Winds of Change, I know I think it was Matt saying like this song puts him to sleep. I actually like it. Like it's not like a highlight, but like I like it. I think it's pretty, and I do like the callback to When I Grew Up to Be a Man at the end, when you hear Brian saying won't last forever. Like I think that's kind of moving. Um, Obviously, this album is infamous for having Hey Little Tomboy on it. I think we talked about it a little, but like I think the song itself is catchy. I think it has a good melody. Unfortunately, the lyrics are like awful and creepy, and I totally get why people can't stand this song. But judging it like musically, I actually think it's one of the more memorable songs on the album in terms of catchiness. But unfortunately, the lyrics make it memorable in the wrong way. Thank God, though, they dropped the adult child version where they have the spoken word bit where you hear Brian saying, you know, let's put a dress on and wear a little makeup and, you know, crap like that. I mean, could you make the song any, you know, more disturbing? But they did. Thank God they dropped that. Besides that, so the reason this album isn't any higher for me is kind of what you said. A lot of the songs feel like solid, but not like top notch. There are a couple of songs I don't care for. Kona Coast has never done much for me. It's kind of like a callback to Hawaii, the song Hawaii, which by the way, I don't care for that song either. But Kona Coast doesn't do much for me. Bells of Paris, I know a lot of people don't like this song. I am definitely with you on that. This was originally supposed to be Bells of Christmas, I believe. The Beach Boys had a failed or a rejected Christmas album around this time, and it ended up pretty much evolving into MIU. There's a couple tracks from that were going to be on that Christmas album that ended up on MIU. But yeah, this is not a bad album in my opinion. I get why people say it's boring or uninteresting, but like in terms of like being listenable, I think it's totally fine. And I actually put it on quite a bit. So yeah,
I like MIU. I like I said, it's just the thing that drags it down compared to most albums for me is just there's not a huge standout on it.
Yeah.
If anything, I like all of the songs on MIU more than some of the other ones I had above it. It's missing that standout, and I can't put it any higher.
Yeah.
Because like even like That's Why God That Made the Radio had the title track for me.
Yeah.
Still Cruising has Somewhere Near Japan. If you give some of those standouts to MIU, like it'd be much higher.
Right.
If you give MIU Angel Come Home, it would be in my top 15.
We should have called this podcast Angel Come Home. We talk about that song all the time.
Okay.
But you know, I hear you. Like for me personally, like I do like My Diane and Match Point of Our Love. Those two are like my personal standouts, but like are they like standouts in the Beach Boys catalog as a whole? Probably not. I think you can make an argument that like for their late 70s material, My Diane is a highlight of that period.
Yeah, it is.
But you know, it's one of those albums where like, you know, I like it, but I totally understand why people are critical of it, and I'm not going to argue about it. You know, like I'll be like, yeah, I get it. So
if it makes you feel any better, I have one of those albums, and it's up there.
Oh, okay.
But number 14, I have Little Deuce Coupe. And a long time ago, or actually not that long time ago, like 3 or 4 months ago, this was like up there, like at like number 20 or like 22, 23. Yeah. And then I listened to it maybe 6-7 months ago. And then I learned the history of the album, and it all hit. And I think the thing that makes this one so high for me is the originals. And I kind of see this not so much as the Car album, but as their doo-wop album. Ballad of Old Betsy, Spirit of America, Car Crazy Cutie, all like doo-wop influenced songs. And I love doo-wop. I'm a huge fan of the Four Seasons, Del Shannon. So a lot of that kind of hit with me. Little Deuce Coupe, not even close to the standout. Our Car Club, not even close to the standout. That was also on, I think, Surfer Girl.
Surfer Girl.
In fact, the thing that brings this album down for me is like the 6 or six non-original tracks.
Yeah.
The new tracks are incredible. And if they gave Brian much more time to work on this album, it would have been fantastic. Would have been like top 10 for me. But they gave him 4 weeks between Surfer Girl and then to finish the album. 4 weeks is not enough time to finish an album. That's usually how long it takes for some bands to record an album.
Right.
It's dragged down by the non-original tracks, but the new ones on here are incredible. Shout out Car Crazy Cutie and shout out Ballad of Old Betsy. Those two are huge standouts. Two of my newer Beach Boys songs that I never really listened to before until now. And those are still relatively new to me. So, I mean, maybe I have a bit of recency bias on it, but I love it.
Yeah, no, it's like we said earlier, it's another one of those albums where like it shows like, you know, Capitol basically saying, you know, we want more material, Brian, you know, like we need another album. So like, you know, what are you supposed to do? And, you know, you only have so much time, you know, like a month between albums, you know, or a couple months, whatever it was. But like you said, it definitely brings it down. The fact that, you know, there is a lot of reused tracks that were already on Surfer Girl. And I think Shutdown's on here too, right? Which was on Surfin' USA. So yeah, I think maybe like what you were saying about the doo-wop, maybe that's why like it doesn't click with me. Like I wouldn't say I hate doo-wop. Like there's some doo-wop songs that I like. But maybe that has to do with it. Maybe because I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm like crazy about doo-wop, and because these songs are very like doo-wop influenced, maybe that's why it doesn't do much for me. But yeah, like a lot of the songs on here, just, I don't know, they just have never really done much for me. Like No Go Showboats on here, right? That doesn't do anything for me. The vocal only tracks they do, I think A Young Man Is Gone is on here. Like those don't do too much for me either. I will say Custom Machines, all right. I think that's on here, right? I think it's the last track. Custom Machines, all right, but like again, it's like I don't put it. It's not a song like I would choose to put on though. Like, you know, if it comes on, if I somewhere, I don't know where I would hear it randomly, maybe on like the Beach Boys channel on Sirius or something. But like I wouldn't flip it. But like it's not a favorite of mine. So
yeah, I'm with you on some of that. I do like doo-wop, so it's a huge plus for me. I also like Cherry Coop's pretty good.
yeah.
It's actually I don't really like Custom Machine too much. But
really?
Not really. No, I like the doo-wop songs. It brings it up for me. And I just wish they gave Brian a little bit more time to work on it. Maybe like one more week and he would have brought out another song. But Capitol.
Yeah.
Same reason why Smile wasn't released.
Right. No, one other thing I wanted to say before we move on here. I feel like personally, like, because like, you know, a lot of people say like, you know, the later 70s Beach Boys albums, you know, they're not all great, you know, and they definitely, they have some low points for sure. But I think the reason why like I can tolerate them more than like, or even like some of them more than like it's like the early 60s material they put out, I think I just have like a higher tolerance for like 70s filler, if that makes any sense. Like it's like less primitive sounding. Like I personally like a lot of songs that are considered yacht rock, not all of it, but like some songs. And like songs like Full Sail on LA, like that's like pretty much yacht rock. And I do enjoy it, even though it might not be like the most musically exciting or interesting. I really enjoy it. While like something on Little Deuce Coupe, like an album cut from that album, most of them I feel like I don't enjoy, or like I just don't want to hear them. So I think it's just a personal preference. That's all. So
yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. I don't know. I just gave this album after learning the history of it, I gave the album a full listen, and I'm like, oh. So, I mean, I still think some of it might just be recency bias because I really only gotten into this album like 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely go back to it more, and I do appreciate the doo-wop influence. But why don't we get to our number 13?
I think it's 14. So I did MIU at 15.
That was my 13. I go first.
Oh, okay. No, all right. So it's me. Okay. So I have my number. Yeah, I have it as number 14. Carl and the Passion's So Tough. So this album is a mixed bag for me. The songs. This is another one that was hard for me to rank because the songs that I love on here, I really, really love. Like All This Is That. I mentioned it on the first episode. One of my favorite 70s Beach Boy songs, or just Beach Boy songs in general. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful song. Great vocals from the guys, especially Carl. Just a really like dreamy song to listen to. So that's like the clear standout for me. Marcella is great. I like Marcella a lot. Especially love the kind of like slide guitar solo on it. It kind of reminds me of like almost like a George Harrison style solo in a way, I guess. Really like that. Here She Comes, great song. Not doesn't really sound like a Beach Boys song, but really really great song. I think Blondie and Ricky did that one. But unfortunately, like pretty much the songs that I did mention, I don't really care for. Like He Come Down has never done much for me. It's kind of like this like gospel thing, like I guess, and like it's one of those songs where like I think there's parts of it that are okay, but like the song as a whole, like especially like the chorus, like the Billy, it doesn't really do too much for me. Make It Good is really boring, I think. It to me also, I forgot to mention Cuddle Up. I really like Cuddle Up a lot. I do think it's a little overproduced, which I think is the biggest gripe people have with Dennis's tracks on Carl and the Passions. They're very like lushly like orchestrated, with like, just they're very high produced, but like almost too much in a way, I feel. Cuddle Up though, I think it works better. Make It Good is just not memorable to me. It's definitely the most skippable track on this album for me. You Need a Mess of Help to Stand Alone has never done much for me. I know some people like that one, but it's never been a favorite of mine. And that's one I've re-listened to multiple times to be like, oh, am I just not getting it? But like I don't know, it's just never done much for me. But yeah, overall, like this album, like I said, has some really great songs on it that I do enjoy. I think that period for the band when Ricky and Blondie were in the group was really interesting, and they were a great live band around that time. Really great live band to see. And if you listen to some of the concert recordings from that time, like the Beach Boys in concert album, really strong. But in terms of the Blondie and Ricky albums, I definitely prefer the second album that they were on, which we'll get to later. So that's my number 14, Carl and the Passions.
Yeah, I have Carl and the Passions pretty similar ranked. I don't have it next, but I do like I have a lot of similar stuff to say. All right, this is the big one for me. I don't know if I'm gonna get hated for this or what. I have Beach Boys 85 at number 13. I think this is the 13th best Beach Boys album. First things first, a lot of people hate the production on this, but as a big new wave fan, I love it. I think the Beach Boys fit it very well. And I think the thing that like especially drives it for people is they're expecting a Pet Sounds when they should be expecting a Culture Club album. So the production is very 80s, but compared to the other albums that come next, I think it fits these songs the best. Maybe I Don't Know is the huge standout for me, especially as a guitar guy. Like, I don't know who's playing the guitar on that song, but it absolutely rips. It's awesome. A lot of the harmonies on this are awesome. Brian's voice isn't as bad as it was earlier or as it will be in the future. It's kind of hit a pretty solid middle ground. And I think a part of that's because they're doing a lot of new stuff with this. Steve Levine's the producer. He does a lot of great work with the songs. Side A, I think, is actually, dare I say it, a perfect 80s album side. Side B is where it gets slow, though. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Passing Friends.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much for me. Male Ego is a CD track, so it doesn't really count. But even that one, I'm not a huge fan of. I think it's all right. I think it's better than Passing Friend.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as a whole, I mean, this album, it rips. You have to go in expecting an 80s pop album, and maybe it'll change your mindset on it. I can't say too much more than I've already said about it. I love this album. I will say this. I went in not really knowing where people rank this one. So that definitely changed a lot for me. I knew like some people didn't like it, but I didn't really know why. So I just went in, I listened to it. I'm like, that was pretty damn good. Get You Back is a killer opener. It's Getting Late has an awesome Carl vocal. Crack at Your Love is an awesome Brian and Al collaboration. And I think that's a song where they're kind of calling back, at least melodically, to some of their early period stuff. But it's not making reference to it, so it actually works. Yeah. And the 80s production actually helps it. Same thing with Get You Back. Maybe, I don't know, like I said, killer guitar, killer Carl vocal, awesome song. I don't really like the Bruce song, She Believes in Love Again, but in the context of the album, I enjoy it. California Calling is the worst song, though. That's a song where, unlike Crack of Your Love, it borrows a lot from their 60s material, but it also like literally repeats, help me Rhonda with some of the vocals and stuff, and I'm not a huge fan. It doesn't do much for me. If anything, I think it kind of lowers some of the album. I'm So Lonely is pretty decent, but that is a very 80s Brian track, and the vocals don't help too much, but I still enjoy it. Where I Belong is pretty good. I Do Love You is pretty good. It's Just a Matter of Time is pretty good. So, but side B, definitely not as good as side A. But side A carries. Carl's vocals carry. I love this album. You got to go in with an open mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those albums where, like, if you're not into that 80s production style, you're probably not going to like it. Like, if you don't like the Culture Club stuff, you're probably not going to like this album, But like you said, you have to go into it kind of like not expecting it to be Pet Sounds. It's its own thing. It's from its own era, For me, like, I don't have a problem with the production, really. My issue, I just don't find the songs that interesting. Which is just my personal opinion, my own taste. But like you mentioned, though, there's, Get You Back, great opener, and Crack at Your Love is great. And there's definitely, it's one of those albums where, like, I wouldn't say that, like, there's like that many like bad songs, Like, I just think at worst, it's just not, at worst for me, it's just uninteresting. At best, it's pretty good. So that's,
yeah. It's my Beach Boys 85 is your MIU.
That's so funny you said that, because literally that crossed my mind and I almost said it like that. Like, that's pretty much our own. Yeah, that's our comparison.
Yeah. Right? But I got to give you credit, though. Like, you said it perfectly. Like, if you're not into that Culture Club 80s production, you're not going to really enjoy it too much. Yeah. And actually, I'm not a huge fan of Culture Club, but I love New Wave. Yeah. I love New Wave, and it made it easy for me to enjoy this album, especially like the time when I first listened to it. I was listening to a lot of New Wave music, so I can appreciate the production on it. And I honestly am so curious, what would have Dennis done with this album? Because I think if you add a couple of Dennis tracks in there, maybe it wouldn't have fit with the production, but who knows? Maybe the album would have been a top 5 for me, but I already have it pretty high. I almost put it lower just so people wouldn't like yell at me, but I got to stick to my guns. I love this album.
No, stick to your guns. Cause I mean, it's your opinion. Don't let, other people influence, where you rank an album. So yeah. All right. So I think it's my number 13 now. And this is another album you've talked about already. So I'm going to echo a lot of what you said, but Smiley Smile is my 13th favorite Beach Boys album. This one, it's never been a personal favorite of mine. I think I mentioned this on the first episode, of like their late 60s like lo-fi albums, with the stripped back production. This is probably my least favorite of those. But it's an album that's grown on me. Obviously, it's got some classic songs on it. It's got Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains. As we talked about, I do prefer the Smile version of Heroes and Villains. I think it's missing something without that bridge section from Smile, but good song. Little Pat is great, as we talked about. With Me Tonight is a nice song, not like super interesting, but like nice vocal from Carl on it. Wind Chimes, I do like it on here. Honestly, probably, the Smile version's good, but pretty close for me, honestly. I do like this creepy version quite a bit. She's Going Bald, as we talked about, weird song, but kind of cool, kind of fun. But there's definitely some stuff on here I don't care for. Vegetables, I'll be honest, it's never been my favorite, either on Smile or Smiley Smile. Like, it's fine, but like, it's not a song I go to very often, that I want to hear very often. And the version on here is definitely inferior, in my opinion, to the Smile version. But yeah, Paul McCartney's on it, chewing vegetables, so that's cool. Fall Breaks and Back to Winter doesn't do anything for me. I think that isn't that from like part of Mrs. O'Leary's.
Yep. It's a re-recorded version of it, actually.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. If you look into it, it's actually pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Again, that's one of those things. So it's cooler if you learn about it, but the actual song itself, meh.
Right. It would probably do more for me if Smile as a whole did more for me, but it's never been like my favorite thing. I know like the Beach Boys fans are obsessed with Smile. Like to me, it's like yeah, there's some great stuff on it, but like as a whole, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of it. Um, Also, anything else Getting Hungry does nothing for me. I think it's annoying. Um, I think the best part is what the verse with Mike. You know, I wake up in the morning. You know, but once it gets into the Getting Hungry chorus, I don't really like it. So kind of another weird song and a baffling choice for a single. I
Yeah.
believe that was released as a single. Like how? Like how does that get released as a single? Like
Smile.
some
Smile
of the
wasn't finished.
that this band made. It's like what were they thinking?
Yeah, although I think that's more of like I don't know, because I think this is when they started Brothers Records, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, they definitely had the freedom like to do whatever they wanted around. I think around this time because this is when they started the Brother Records label. You know they were in Sick of Capital and but just baffling.
Meh. I agree with you. There's a lot of some weird stuff I don't really care for on it. A lot of that stuff is cooler, like if you look into it in concepts, but in execution, meh, it's all right. The stuff I like on it though, I really like. But like I said though, like as a whole, it's a pretty cool, weird record if you're in the right mood for it.
Mm-hmm.
But compared to the rest of the records that I put above it, I'm not going back to it unless I'm really in the mood to hear that.
Yeah.
All
right.
So,
It's your number 13 or your number 12?
12.
12
I have Carl and the Passions.
Oh, okay.
I'm a huge fan of this era of the band.
Yeah.
Not just so much because of the live era that they were in, although that's a huge part of it, but a lot of the music they were making was so different from the other Beach Boys albums. And Carl and the Passions, on its own, is not really much of a Beach Boys record. It's a Blondie Chaplin and Ricky Fattar record, if you really look at it. The Beach Boys contributed to it, but the sound they were going for was almost word for word what Blondie and Ricky were doing in their own band that was called The Flame.
Yep.
But that doesn't make it any less bad, because I love this record. It's Here She Comes was like one of the first Beach Boys songs I discovered after looking into the band. Like I literally I knew like their surf stuff, but then I started doing a full deep dive, and one of the first songs I looked up was from Carl and the Passions, and it's Here She Comes. And I'm like, holy shit. Because I was a huge like fan of Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and all those bands. And Here She Comes. I'm like, there's no way this is the Beach Boys. And it kind of isn't. It's more, like I said, The Flame. But it's still super cool. But then I started doing more deep diving in the band. And then I came back to this record. And then I listened to All This Is That. I listened to Marcella. I'm like, these are awesome songs. And the Beach Boys really fit this sound so well. They have the right harmonies for like this soft rock group that is on this album. However, the songs I don't like on here, I don't really like. Like you said, Make It Good.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much for me. And part of that's because the album's kind of short. It has 8 songs. And like even though I like 6 out of 8, that's really only like 3/4 of the record. There's a whole quarter of the record that I just don't care for at all. So
I think it's interesting that they packaged this album with Pet Sounds. You know, they did like that double release where you get
super.
Like I feel like that's a very like I don't really know what the idea there was because it's like, you know, I don't think it necessarily makes your new material look great. Like if you're releasing it with Pet Sounds, which is arguably like the greatest album your band's released, you know, so it's like if you're immediately inviting comparison, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So like, yeah, to go from like to listen, not to say obviously there's some great moments on this album, but like, yeah, to go back and forth between this album and Pet Sounds, I don't think they were doing it any favors releasing them together. I know people are obsessed with that copy of Pet Sounds because it sounds really good apparently, but yeah, another questionable decision.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, from about Beach Boys 85 on my list upward though, we're dealing with like 4 out of 5 star albums or higher. These are all albums I thoroughly enjoy beginning to end. Some more than others, but I still really love this album. I really love Beach Boys 85, but because I feel like I'm kind of saying negative things about this album when there's a whole lot of positive on it.
No, sure.
Marcella and all this and that are two highlights of this era, and the production on those songs are incredible.
Yes.
Uh,
Marcella also is a great live as well.
yeah.
I know a lot of people say like, oh, the live version like blows this one out of. I actually do like the studio version of this song as well, but I do the live version does rock really hard for sure. So I get why there's a preference for it.
All right. You want to number 12 for you?
Yeah, number 12. All right. So my number 12 is this is the first, I guess, early album that I do enjoy quite a bit, and it's Surfer Girl. So the reason why this album is so much higher than the albums that preceded it, like Surfin' Safari and Surfin' USA and Little Deuce Coupe, which followed, is because there's a good amount of quality material on this album. And in my opinion, there's still filler. But the highlights are so good. You got the title track, Surfer Girl, which is just a classic song that's really stood the test of time. Surfer Moon, gorgeous song. I believe Brian wrote that maybe for another artist, and then they also recorded it as the Beach Boys on Surfer Girl. If I might be wrong on that, but I think that's what I read. But it's a really good song, really pretty song. Little Deuce Coupe, obviously a great song that was reissued on Little Deuce Coupe, the album, but a good song. In My Room, which you praised a lot on the first episode we did with our top 10 songs. One of Brian's best early ballads. A lot of people would say it is his best like early ballad before 64, 65. Your Summer Dream. I love this song. So beautiful. Really kind of a stripped back song. It's just like a guitar and Brian's vocals. I don't think any of the other guys are on this one. But it's a really, really pretty song. And to me, that's like the underrated song from this album that like nobody talks about outside of like the Beach Boys community. But as I mentioned, there's still some filler on here. You got the Rocking Surfer, like doesn't do anything for me. Hawaii annoys me. I know that might not be considered filler, but like I've never liked Hawaii. I think it's annoying. Surfer's Rule doesn't do anything for me. Our Car Club doesn't do anything for me. I know you were talking about that song, but it doesn't do too much for me. But Surfer Girl to me is like the first album that showed like that the Beach Boys could put together like a pretty solid amount of material on an album. Like it wasn't this didn't feel like it doesn't feel filler heavy to me. Like there's filler, but like the amount of quality material makes it an album that's worth owning in my opinion. So that's my number 12.
I'll get to Surfer Girl later. I love Hawaii. I don't know how you can hate that song.
I've never liked it, and even when they did it live, when I saw Mike and Bruce, it was better live, but I still not a huge fan.
I'm sure it's better live, but if you want to see that thing live, don't see it with Mike and Bruce. See it with somebody who has a really good falsetto. But although the live band has really good artists, so that's true.
No, they've got a guy who does really good falsetto. Actually, that was one of my biggest takeaways from that concert. Was I forget what the guy's name is, but he sounds excellent doing Brian's parts for sure.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
I think actually speaking on that topic, I think it was Jeff Foskett died. I think
he did. Yeah, sad to hear that for sure.
Yeah. He was with the band for like 50 years.
Right, longtime friend of Brian's as well. So yeah, very sad to hear that. Did a great job on the vocals on like a lot of Brian's parts. So yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I think he toured as Carl or in Carl's place in the 2012 tour.
Oh yeah, right. I think you're right. Yeah.
All right, so my number 11, I got Summer Days and Summer Nights. I feel like some people have this a bit higher, and I understand why, because I think side B of this album and a lot of side Bs of the era are really good for the band, but side A is a bit of a slog for me to get through. I do like I think the Girl from Salt Lake City is pretty good.
Girl from New York City.
New York City, because I think Salt Lake City is a separate track.
It is, yeah.
And I think Then I Kissed Her is pretty good, but Then I Kissed Her is also a cover of a Ronettes song.
Right.
You kind of see almost a stripped back version of Beach Boys Today production, which is really cool to hear. And I think they do an excellent job of blending their California material with that today aesthetic of the album. But side B totally carries this for me. I think California Girls is my number 10 favorite Beach Boys song. Although this is a quick edit. I actually made a mistake on my list. She Knows Me Too Well was my number 8. And hold on. Darlin was my number 9, not my number 8. She Knows
Oh,
Me Too
okay.
Well is my number 8. And that's a
Okay.
huge miss for me because I love She Knows Me Too Well.
Mm.
But anyways, I going back to my topic. Side B is killer. I love how they blend that pop production that they do on Today with the summer songs of All Summer Long. So awesome album. I just wish side A was a bit better. I think what sucks about this album and what could have put this album in my top 10, maybe my top 5, is if they took off one of the weaker tracks and put on Sherry She Needs Me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I think it was known as Sandy at that time. But
Sandy. Yep.
if they took out I'm Bugged with My Old Man and just put Sherry She Needs Me on side B, this album would be much higher. But it's still really high on my list. It's still one of my favorite albums by the band. California Girls, Girl Don't Tell Me, Let 'Em Run Wild are 3 masterpieces of songs.
Help Me Rhonda's on there too. So
The inferior version.
you prefer the Today version?
1000% more, yes.
Wow. Yeah,
I still love the song, but
I know there are a lot of people with that opinion. I was surprised to hear that actually, that like there are a lot of people in the Beach Boys community that prefer the Today version. But no, I think it's an interesting version, but I do prefer Summer Days and Summer Nights.
but it's such a good song that you would need like Summer in Paradise type production to ruin it.
Yeah.
Imagine that. That'd be a nuts version of that song.
I feel like I'm scared to hear it.
I think I should do that on my own. I have recording equipment. Let's see what I can do.
Oh God, I'm scared to hear what you create.
I'll get like AI Mike Love to do the Help Me Rhonda part.
Yeah, there was that guy who did like his own version of Smile, right? You're gonna do your own version of Paradise.
But except I'm gonna take like the greatest songs by the Beach Boys and give it Summer in Paradise production.
Give him like that ugly drum sound too. Like, oh God.
Yeah. Help Me Rhonda. That would be.
Get like the most nasally Mike doing it too.
I'm gonna get like 2016 Mike Love on it. I don't know. That's a separate video that we can work on. What would be like? What would be like the worst possible Mike Love recreations? But
oh God.
Again, Summer Days, Summer Nights. It's an awesome album. I think side A just kind of holds it back, and there was other tracks that they could have put in there.
Yeah.
All right.
So my number 11 is an album that I know you love, as it's your background, and it's an album that I'm sure you probably have it much higher on your list, but it's All Summer Long, and this is an album that I think is a really like cohesive album. Obviously, like Little Deuce Coupe kind of was like, it worked well too because it was all car songs, but like I think the general like summer theme really like works on this album, and I think that there's a really consistent set of material. I Get Around, I mean, it's your favorite Beach Boys song, and it's an amazing song. I mean, one of their absolute classics that's really stood the test of time. All Summer Long, the title track is great. That follows I Get Around. Hushabye is a great cover. Great vocals on this one from the guys. Brian, great falsetto, and Mike delivers a really nice bridge section on this as well. We'll Run Away, great ballad, underrated ballad. Not a lot of people talk about this one, but I really like it. Nice lyrics too. Wendy is a song that has grown on me quite a bit. Used to not be like really much of a favorite of mine, but it's grown on me a lot, and I really like the organ solo in the middle. Really cool, almost like kind of like progressive sounding in a way. Girls on the Beach, great song that I somehow forgot to mention in the last video. This song, I know it's kind of like Surfer Girl Part 2. It's got some similarities in the melody, but I really like the chord changes in this one. Love that bridge section with Dennis. The sun in her hair. It's really good. There is a bit of filler on this album, which is what prevents it from being any higher for me, from like making my top 10. Like Carl's Big Chance, it's filler, it's instrumental. Do You Remember? Doesn't do much for me. I don't care for Driving much at all. I think my dad told me he was in the car one day, and apparently that song came on the radio, and I was like, really? Like, why are they playing Driving? Like, I think there's so many better Beach Boys songs from that period that they could have been playing. But, and then obviously there's Our Favorite Recording Sessions, which is, more, spoken word stuff. The guys just talking and having a conversation. And sometimes that stuff is fun. But like judging it like as a whole, like as an album, it's not obviously it's there to fill up space. So I do kind of hold that against it in my ranking. But it's a really strong, solid album. It's not, it definitely, like, I do prefer albums like Today, and Summer Days, Summer Nights, which followed it the following year. But this is like a really great, like a great stepping stone, I feel like, to those albums where like you can really see, Brian, really developing as a producer and songwriter, because some of his best material is on this album. So, that's my number 11 all summer long.
I have a lot to say about that album, and so I'm gonna hold off on a lot of that.
Yeah,
but I agree. There is some filler on there, but for me, the filler, I think I said this earlier, it's brought up by the super strong tracks you have on there. Like I actually listened to this whole album today just to like confirm a lot of my spots, especially with my higher rankings and my lower rankings, just to confirm where they land. And I listen to Drive, and I'm like, I know this is filler, but I'm still enjoying it.
It's got a nice like driving guitar instrumental on it. I think especially at the end, I like that a lot.
In fact, I would go as so much to say I think it's my favorite filler song by the Beach Boys.
Wow.
But like I said, I got a lot to say about All Summer Long, and we'll get there. I did want to say this about, you kind of mentioned how in Summer Days, Summer Nights, he kind of does this similar style that he did on All Summer Long, but he did it better with production. Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned the instrumental. I'm like, how did I forget Summer Means New Love? That's a really good song.
Yeah.
And I think I'm almost curious, because I mean, I know Beach Boys Today landed in between these albums. What would like a collaboration between All Summer Long and Summer Days kind of look like? Because they're two very similar albums. And I don't know. I mean, like, that'd be pretty cool to see. But I agree with everything you say about it. I just agree more.
Yeah. No, I mean, they are similar albums in my view, like All Summer Days, Summer Nights, because like they both got like those themes of like, summer and California and just like that lifestyle, teenage love, stuff like that. But then both of them, I think there is like some filler that holds like, I will say there's nothing on All Summer Long in terms of like the filler tracks. There's nothing on there that annoys me as much as like Amusement Parks USA, which I hate like a lot. I don't like that song.
Didn't like it.
That's like, I remember I mentioned how I can't stand like when like Barker comes in and starts talking. Well, they do the same shit on Amusement Parks USA, but it's even more annoying. And it completely ruins the song. And I didn't mention it. I know you talked about it, but like I cannot agree enough about the first side of Summer Days and Summer Nights. Like the issue, like there's some tracks on that first side that just like, Amusement Parks USA, I don't like. Salt Lake City is fine, but like it's not like a standout. It's got a nice instrumental, but it's not like a standout song. And Then I Kissed Her is like an okay cover. Like it's solid, but like I don't think it's the most memorable thing. But it's like for that album, like this, it starts getting really good once you get to like California Girls, Let 'Em Run Wild, Help Me Rhonda, Summer Means New Love, You're So Good to Me. Like that's where that album really picks up steam. But I definitely do see similarities between All Summer Long and Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more though on side A. Like I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity if you look at like the cut material around that time. Like, what if he put Guess I'm Dumb on that album? That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Sandy or Cherish Needs Me, both awesome songs. But there's a lot more to say about both these albums, and I'm sure we'll get to those in part 2. But we're gonna cut it off here so that we can do our top 10 next time.
Yep. That'll do it for today. But we're looking forward to finishing off our ranking. We still have 10 more albums to talk about, and it's going to be a lot of fun because these are our favorite albums. So it's going to be fun to share those and talk about those. We may have somebody else join us for this next episode. We'll see. But hopefully we can have somebody also join us and share their picks for their favorite albums. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the second episode of Good Timin. I hope you enjoyed the show. Had a lot of fun doing this ranking with you, Reilly, and it was a lot of fun talking about our favorite albums, and can't wait to keep it going. So, of course, if you like this podcast and you want to hear more, feel free to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. We greatly appreciate the support because that's what motivates us to make more Beach Boys content. And thank you again for listening. It's been a lot of fun, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.